In the past, I've talked about my experience as a developer going into freelancing and consulting and how I made over $400,000 a year in doing so. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to break into freelancing and consulting as a developer and also to how to build a successful career around it. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here. These are things that worked for me, but I do want to emphasize that not only are these things that I experienced in my own career, but when I started getting into consulting and taking it seriously, I ended up setting aside some money and hiring a bunch of experienced consultants that were already doing well and buying their time and basically picking their brain and asking them a bunch of questions to find out what it was that they were doing that I could maybe do myself. Because when I first got into consulting, I was actually not successful at all. In fact, it took me a few tries before I actually saw anything positive happen in the sense of maybe being able to kind of support myself versus working for someone else. So it took me a few tries, but ultimately what made me successful, I feel, was me deciding to actually find people that were already successful and ask them a bunch of questions and basically try to re-implement the things that they were doing. And that actually really worked. Therefore, this video is kind of a combination of all of the experiences that I've had personally, as well as a lot of the stuff that I've learned from these more experienced and successful consultants that are also in the software industry. But also, I kind of wanted to create a video that I could say that if I went back 10 years and I found this video myself, I would have found it extremely helpful. And what would that video look like? Like if I could create something for myself to get me going and kind of avoid a lot of the mistakes or maybe get traction a lot faster, what would that look like? And that's kind of why I made this video. And that's what this video is going to be maybe aimed to accomplish. So with that being said, let's go ahead and kind of get started talking about what it looks like to build a successful career in freelancing/consulting as a developer. The first thing I would like to talk about is specialization. Now, today we are competing with not everyone in our local city or our country even. We're competing with everyone in the entire world. Therefore, it is a lot harder to stand out. And the easiest way to stand out is to have a specialization of some sort that you either already have or that you're kind of working towards that you can portray in your online presence. So, for instance, if I am looking for a web developer, how hard is it for me to find an actual single web developer out of the millions of people who kind of claim to be web developers? Instead, let's say that I am a restaurant owner and I need someone to build out an e-commerce site for donuts. If I find someone who talks about their specialty as being someone who builds out e-commerce sites for donut shops, then I probably know that this person has enough specialized experience to get my stuff done versus the general web developer. So therefore, I'm going to hire them in particular. What if I want to hire someone who is a specialist in building out serverless infrastructures on AWS? Am I going to find a web developer or am I going to find someone whose LinkedIn profile, Twitter profile, blog posts, and everything focus on this specialization? I'm going to go for that specialization. So finding a specialization that you can talk about in your public presence is very, very important. It doesn't mean that you have to be specialized in that today, but you can go ahead and work towards specializing in that today by updating, again, all of your presence on social media and starting to kind of really focus on your learnings towards moving in that direction. And therefore, when people start looking for that, you're going to be showing up a lot faster than everyone else, and it's going to be a lot easier to land roles. And that kind of brings us to our next point, our online presence and your online presence. Now, one of the best pieces of advice that I got that actually had the largest impact, I would say, out of everything I did was to tailor my online presence as someone that is really focused on the technologies that I'm working with and the technologies that I'm specializing in, and being very clear and crisp about that across all of my social media profiles, including my LinkedIn. So what I basically did was I updated my Twitter, I updated all of my bios on Stack Overflow, on all of the different places I was associated with publicly. And I pretty much straightforwardly said, okay, these are the things that I'm specializing in. I am available for freelancing and consulting, and this is a very, very easy way or the preferred way to get in touch with me. Making those simple changes will actually have a lot more effect on you than you may expect. And that's something I would just definitely recommend, because when people are out there maybe looking to hire a consultant or a freelancer, you again are essentially competing with everyone else that is out there doing this. So all of these different things put together really make a big difference. But when someone is out there scouting out a few different candidates, and they find a freelancer that seems very, very focused on maybe this one thing, they might feel a little more confident, and that might put you over the edge. So this is something I highly recommend. Definitely go update all of the different social media profiles that you have out there publicly, and you should see some positive result from that. Another thing I want to talk about is content. Now, the biggest way to get people to notice you online is by content marketing. And I had, very, very good success with this in the React Native ecosystem. I would learn something new while building out some application, and I would immediately go and create a blog post about it, maybe even create a video about it. Now, you don't have to create a video. You don't have to do a lot of stuff, but I do recommend creating a few pieces of content around the thing that you want to get hired doing, you want to be known as a specialist in. The main reason for that is, well, there's actually a couple of reasons. The first one is you are probably going to actually get leads for getting work that way. So if you create a few different blog posts that actually solve people's problems, they're going to find that. And then you maybe link to your social media or your website that says, hey, I am a consultant and I'm for hire and I'm looking for work. And you kind of spread these little breadcrumbs all around the internet. And the more that you have out there, the more that people are going to find you and the more likely that they are to hire you. And you need to be very, very clear that you are for hire, available for hire in all of these different areas as well. So at the footer of your blog post, or maybe even at the very top, say, hey, I am X, X, and X, and I am specializing in X, and I am very interested in taking on freelance projects today. And, portray an aura of very, very crisp and concise, knowing what you're talking about. Even if you kind of are on the cusp of maybe like learning something, as long as you know enough to write a blog post about it, you probably know enough to actually use it in a real world project. So I think one of the things that is hard to get a grasp on getting started as a freelancer or a consultant is understanding that it's all a learning experience. No one knows everything. But what people looking to hire people like us are looking for is someone that gives can kind of portray that they know what they're talking about, because they want a problem solver. So be a problem solver, portray that, and you're going to get more leads and people are going to feel more comfortable hiring you, and be very comfortable with, of course, solving those problems. If you're not comfortable yet with solving problems, freelancing and consulting might not even be for you, because typically people are hiring you to kind of get those problems solved, solve those difficult problems sometimes, and, just get work done. So, a lot of this stuff kind of goes together though. Content creation, your personal presence online, and specialization. So those three things are very, very, I would say correlating. Another thing I would say is there's this really, really great talk that I've mentioned a few different times called Building Bridges. And it's a really kind of a frame of mind or a thought process that you as a developer might start getting into, and you will see a lot of positive benefits from it. And for me, it directly led to a lot of really good consulting and freelancing opportunities. The idea is that me as a developer, I kind of learned a lot of the things that I know today from other developers that are out there helping other people. So if you learn something new, you write a blog post about it, maybe you go on Twitter and talk about it, and then maybe later on you find someone that's struggling with that same issue and you reach out and help those people. So over time, building these bridges, helping other people, creating content, and making a network this way is kind of a really great way to kind of build out an online presence of someone who is known to solve problems and help people, and therefore you might get more opportunities that come out of it. So to learn more about what I'm talking about with building bridges, I'm going to say go ahead and watch this video here. It's from Aaron Frost. It's from a keynote at, I think, NG Vegas. And I actually watched this talk in person, and it was really great, and it kind of really, really helped me out. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is networking. Now, everyone knows that networking is like a big thing, but how do you actually build out a network? Well, there are many different ways to do this, right? But I think one of the most effective ways of doing this isn't trying to meet a million people. I would identify maybe 10, 20, 50 people that you feel are really genuinely good people out there helping other people that might also have leads to opportunities that you would be interested in, and building out a relationship with them would be your focus at that point. Don't worry about being in every single conversation. Focus on ways that you might be able to help them in ways of maybe contributing to a conversation or finding just any opportunity to maybe interact with them and talk to them and find a way to kind of reach out to them when you might be able to help them out. And being consistent about that, just over time, though, those relationships will actually bloom into many more relationships. And before you know it, you're going to have a big network. And if you're out there talking about that you're available for work, you're going to end up getting leads from all of these different things that kind of happen within your network. And I think consistency is another big thing that I would kind of underscore here. Being consistent in all of these things is very important. If you just say one time that I'm available for freelancing and I'm specializing in this, maybe on your social media, that's not enough. People are going to forget, or they're not going to see that you're active, or maybe someone doesn't even see that because you get new followers later, or maybe they didn't see the tweet or whatever. So be consistent in your networking, be consistent in your content creation, and be consistent in your creation cycle in general. And I think over time, again, you're going to see a lot of positive benefits from that. The last thing I want to kind of really focus on is the different places out there that have to do with building out a network that are not just Twitter or LinkedIn or any of those places, which are great places for sure. But there's a lot of communities, like on Discord, for example, where people are posting job opportunities and stuff like that. So, for example, I can say on the React to Flux Discord channel, which is kind of a React-focused Discord, they have a jobs board. There are jobs boards on a lot of different Discord servers, and each one has their own community of people. So what I used to do as a consultant when I needed leads is that I would go to these different jobs boards, and I would look through all of the different people that have posted in the last maybe week or something like that. And I would send a tailored, specialized email to them and say, hey, I would introduce myself. I would say the different things that I'm available for hiring, and I would just kind of like cold email them. A lot of these people weren't even looking to hire consultants. They were looking for full-time people. But with the current job market, or as it was then, and especially as it is now, a lot of times people just take what they can get. If they find someone that fits their needs, they're going to hire them, even if they're not the exact perfect fit for a full-time role. They might bring you on as a consultant. And if you deliver, if you're good, then you're going to kind of have, that recurring maybe client in the long run. And finally, the really last thing I want to kind of talk about is create some type of basic website or landing page for yourself that really talks about the things that you're interested in doing and the things that you're specializing in, because all these different things individually aren't going to really matter a whole lot, but they all together adding up will mean a lot. So if you have a great LinkedIn, you have a great social media profile, you have a great blog, your GitHub is up to date and fresh, and you have a website that kind of really focuses on the things that you're doing and you're specializing in, and you have a few fresh pieces of content, and you make sure you underline that, hey, I am for hire, or I'm a consultant, or maybe that you have your own consultancy, and all of this stuff points to it. You need to basically take all of the different content marketing that you're doing and link to everything that is out there. You link to your Twitter from your blog posts, you link to your blog posts from your Twitter, you link to your website from everything, and vice versa. Link all of this stuff together, so no matter where they land, they can kind of go between all of the different profiles and they can find out everything about you, and make sure you have your contact info very visible, and therefore people can really easily reach you. So I think that's about it as far as kind of the main stuff that I would say focusing on and getting started to kind of get into consulting. The one thing I would say to keep in mind is that this doesn't happen overnight. You start doing this stuff, you start building out all of this body of work, and over time you're going to have more and more leads coming in. And at first you're going to be taking whatever work you can get. At least I was charging very little. I was charging maybe, $50, $75 an hour, which to me was still a lot of money. but ultimately it was not nearly as much money as I ultimately ended up making. So at first, you're going to not get as many leads. You're going to be charging a lot less money. Over time, you're going to get more and more leads. They're going to come in. You're going to get more experience. You're going to start raising your rates. The way that I would raise my rates is that I would say, okay, I have 40 hours a week booked at $100 an hour. If I get a new client come in, I'm going to go ahead and say, oh, my new rate, or my rate for them, it's not really a new rate, it's kind of my rate, is $150 an hour. If I get that new rate landed at $150, then I try to raise my rate on my existing client. Once that, of course, contract is up, I'm not going to raise the rate on an existing contract. Once that contract is up, I will then raise the rate. If they stick with me, that's great. I'm going to now raise my rate for the next new client. So you keep kind of like bumping that rate up until you hit either a rate that can no longer go up, or you're comfortable with how much you're making, whatever works good for you. That's hourly billing. There's also flat rate billing or project pricing. And this works really well for certain things where instead of saying I'm charging $200 an hour or $250 an hour, you're saying, okay, this is a project and I am going to charge you $50,000 to kind of complete this project. Now, this kind of pricing is a lot more tricky than hourly pricing, because hourly pricing can be a little bit more flexible on time. So I can say, I don't know exactly how long this is going to take, but I'm going to be estimating 50 hours. It could be more or less, but I'm going to be charging you hourly. On flat rate, you typically are giving them a buy at one price type of deal. And if you end up taking a lot longer than you expect, then you end up losing money. But what this flat rate pricing enables you to do is to kind of get out of that hourly billing. So for instance, trainings work really well. I used to charge $10,000 to $15,000 for a single day of training. Whereas if I broke that up hourly, it would be like $2,000 an hour. That doesn't sound very good to a customer. So if I say, oh, this training is going to cost $25,000 or $30,000, I can also maybe break apart the economics for them and say, okay, you have 25 developers. They're going to increase their efficiency by 5% or 10% by what they're going to learn. And their yearly, salary is X dollars. So therefore, this is actually a really good value for them. And that kind of also goes into this idea of value-based pricing, where you kind of get away again from your hourly pricing into like this more project-based pricing, but you're able to maybe attach a value to it. This kind of works really well, I think, for e-commerce sites where you're or e-commerce applications where you're saying, okay, this piece of code that I'm going to be writing is going to be shipping this feature, and this feature might make you $1 million over the next 5 years, and I'm going to charge you $100,000 to build it out. Now, this project might only take you, 50 hours or 30 hours or 100 hours, I don't know. But if you actually broke that up into hourly pricing, it would be a lot. But the actual value proposition for them makes a lot of sense. So, for me, I used to switch up hourly pricing, project-based pricing / value pricing, depending on the situation. I didn't do a whole lot of the project / value-based pricing except for trainings. I know a lot of people that are out there doing still trainings today, virtually making a good amount of money. So that's something to consider. I think it depends what works best for you. And with experience, you're going to learn a lot more about it. But, for me, the very, very early thing was just getting clients, and all of this other stuff that you worry about later on is great to worry about. But for me, I just wanted to kind of get that funnel of customers and clients coming in. Now, applying all of the things I originally talked about, your online profiles and images in your image, your specialization, your content marketing, pointing it all to some type of funnel is going to be a very great long-term approach. And I think it's going to work out really well. And I think that sums really about all of it up. One of the things that I did a while back was I wrote a blog post called The Prosperous Software Consultant that goes into some of this stuff in a little bit more depth maybe. So check out this blog post. It walks through some of this as well. And I think that's about it. If I think of anything more interesting that I can kind of possibly share about my experience as a software consultant, I will. And until then, I guess thank you for checking out this video. If you're not already, subscribe to my channel, like this video, consider turning on notifications. And that's it for me. So I'll see you around.